The sanctum of eternal light had stood on the holy moon of Prime for 12,000 years. Its silver towers reached toward the heavens like fingers grasping at stars, and the light of 3 distant suns painted its walls in colors that shifted with each passing hour. Pilgrims traveled for months through the emptiness of space just to stand at its gates. They came from worlds so far apart that their ancestors had never seen the same constellations, yet they all came seeking the same thing. They came for the blade. High Priest had served the sanctum for 300 years. His scaled skin had turned from the deep blue of youth to the weathered gray of extreme age, and his eyes had witnessed more hope and heartbreak than most beings could imagine. He had watched countless pilgrims enter the sacred chamber with fire in their hearts. He had watched every single one of them fail. The blade of First Dawn rested on a pedestal of black stone at the center of the innermost chamber. Nobody knew exactly what it was made of. Nobody knew exactly how old it was. The records said only that the architects had forged it in the heart of a dying star, long before the first had learned to walk upright, long before the first human had looked up at the night sky and wondered what those tiny lights might be. The architects had left it behind as a test, a gift, a promise that one day someone would prove worthy of wielding it. In 12,000 years, nobody had. The blade weighed the soul. That was what told every pilgrim who entered the chamber. It did not measure strength or skill or intelligence. It measured truth. It looked inside a person and saw everything they had ever been, everything they had ever done, everything they had ever hidden from themselves. And because every soul carried some weight of guilt or fear or self-deception, every soul was found wanting. Today the outer chambers were crowded with pilgrims from across the galaxy. Stood at his usual place beside the pedestal and watched them file in. He saw hulking warriors whose arms were thick as tree trunks. He saw delicate mystics who floated rather than walked, their bodies more light than matter. He saw a delegation from the Empire, their ambassador dressed in ceremonial robes that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. And near the back of the crowd, almost invisible among the grander visitors, he noticed a human woman in worn clothing. She did not look like a pilgrim, she looked like a tourist. Her name was Lisa Moore. She was 34 years old and she came from a small city called Portland on a planet called Earth. She worked as a salvage consultant for the Allied merchant fleet, which meant she spent most of her time examining old spacecraft and deciding which parts were worth saving and which should be melted down for scrap. It was not glamorous work, but she was good at it, and it paid well enough to let her see the galaxy. She had not come to Prime seeking the blade. She had not come seeking anything at all. Her transport ship had developed engine trouble and the orbital dock above the moon was the closest safe harbor. The repairs would take 3 days. She had time to kill. The sanctum offered tour. Lisa liked old buildings. She liked the weight of history in their walls, the sense that countless lives had passed through the same spaces over countless years. Her grandmother had taken her to church every Sunday when she was young, and though Lisa had never been particularly religious, something about sacred places still called to her. Maybe it was the architecture. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was just the fact that human beings had been building temples and churches and holy sites for as long as they had been building anything at all. She found a spot near a pillar and leaned against it, watching as began the ceremony. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder rolling across distant mountains. "Step forward those who would be tested," the old priest announced. "Know that the blade demands truth. It cannot be deceived. It cannot be bargained with. It will reveal what lies within you, and that revelation may break you. Many have entered this chamber believing themselves worthy. None have left carrying the blade. Yet the architects promised that one day someone would succeed. Perhaps that day is today. Perhaps one of you carries the light the blade seeks." The ambassador moved first. His name was, and he walked with the confidence of someone who had never been told he could not have something he wanted. His scales were polished to a shine, and his robes flowed behind him like water. He had spent years preparing for this moment. He had meditated and fasted and consulted with seers, and wise ones across 17 systems. He believed with absolute certainty that he was destined for greatness. He reached the pedestal. The blade sat in its groove, colors shifting across its surface like oil on water. Took a breath. He reached out. His fingers closed around the handle. For a moment nothing happened. Then his scales went pale. His eyes went wide. His body began to shake as though something invisible was tearing through his mind, and he staggered backward with a sound that was half scream and half sob. Two of his attendants rushed forward to catch him before he hit the floor. "The blade has spoken," said. His voice held no judgment, only ancient weariness. "Your heart harbors ambition without purpose, power sought for its own sake. You are found wanting." Lisa watched from her spot by the pillar. She watched as pilgrim after pilgrim approached the blade, and pilgrim after pilgrim fell away in failure. A warrior collapsed to his knees and wept like a child. A mystic touched the handle and began screaming in frequencies so high they shattered a crystal decoration on the far wall. An elderly scholar who had spent her entire life studying the blade's history reached for it with trembling hands, and then simply stood there, frozen, tears streaming down her face, until attendants gently led her away. Hours passed. The crowd thinned. Lisa remained, curious despite herself, wondering what it was about this ancient weapon that could break such powerful beings so completely. She had seen people handle difficult truths before. She had watched friends go through divorces and deaths and failures that seemed like the end of the world. But she had never seen anything affect people the way this blade did. Near the end of the day, a young female approached the pedestal. She moved with careful grace, every step measured and deliberate. Watched her with something that looked almost like hope in his old eyes. This was his student, Lisa realized. His apprentice. Someone he had trained for decades to face this very moment. The young priestess touched the blade. She screamed. When she fell, caught her himself, and Lisa saw grief on his face. Real grief, deep and old and terrible. The kind of grief that came from watching something you loved fail again and again. "Even those who serve the light," the old priest murmured, "carry shadows within." Lisa pushed away from her pillar and turned toward the exit. Her ship would be ready in 2 days. She had seen enough. Lisa was halfway to the exit when someone bumped into her from behind. She stumbled forward a step and turned to find a young attendant staring at her with wide eyes and scales flushed deep purple with embarrassment. "My deepest apologies," the attendant stammered, his name badge red in the common galactic script. "I was not watching where I was going. The ceremony always leaves me distracted. Are you injured?" "I'm fine," Lisa said. "No harm done, it's crowded in here." "It was crowded," corrected gently. "Most have left now. Only those who truly believe they have a chance remain for the final hours." He paused, tilting his head in a way that Lisa had learned meant curiosity among his species. "You are human, yes. I have not seen many of your kind on Prime. Just passing through, ship trouble. Thought I'd see the sights while I wait." "And what do you think of our sanctum, of the blade?" Lisa glanced back toward the central chamber. Through the archway she could still see the pedestal, the blade resting in its groove like it had rested there for 12,000 years, patient and silent and waiting. "It's beautiful," she admitted. "But I feel bad for everyone who came all this way just to get rejected." "The blade does not reject," said. "It reveals. There is an important difference. Many pilgrims say that even in failure they found something valuable. They saw truths about themselves that they had been hiding from for years. Some leave here and change their lives completely. They end bad relationships. They abandon careers that made them miserable. They finally say the things they had been too afraid to say. So it's like really aggressive therapy." Scales shifted to a lighter shade. Lisa thought this might be amusement. That is an unusual way to describe it, but perhaps not inaccurate. They walked together toward the main chamber, explaining the history of the sanctum as they went. The architects had built it alongside the blade, he told her. They had designed every corridor and every chamber to guide pilgrims toward that final moment of truth. The walls were made of a material that absorbed sound and emotion, so that each person who entered the inner chamber faced the blade alone with their own thoughts, undisturbed by the hopes and fears of others. The architects believed that truth was the greatest gift they could leave behind, said. Not power, not wealth, not technology, truth. They thought that if beings across the galaxy could learn to face themselves honestly, all other problems would become solvable. That's a nice idea, Lisa said. Did it work? The galaxy is still full of war and suffering and cruelty, so perhaps not entirely. But the sanctum has helped some people. That has to count for something. They reached the inner chamber. It was nearly empty now. A few attendants moved quietly along the walls, lighting candles and adjusting decorations that had been disturbed during the ceremony. Stood alone beside the pedestal, his back bent and his head bowed. He looked exhausted. He looked old in a way that went beyond years, like something inside him had grown tired of hopping. Your master seems sad, Lisa said. He trained sister for 60 years, replied quietly. He believed she would be the one. He has believed many times before and been wrong many times before, but this time was different. This time he was certain. Why her? She is the soul he has ever known. She has never lied. She has never cheated. She has spent her entire life in service to others, seeking nothing for herself. If she could not lift the blade, my master does not believe anyone can. Lisa thought about that. She thought about all the pilgrims she had watched fail today, the ambitious ones and the humble ones, the warriors and the mystics, the young and the old. They had all reached for the blade believing they might be worthy, and the blade had found something wanting in every single one of them. Can anyone try? She asked suddenly. Looked at her with surprise. What do you mean? I mean, is it only for official pilgrims, or can anyone just walk up there and touch it? Anyone may attempt the trial. The blade does not discriminate based on status or species or belief, but we discourage casual attempts. The psychic feedback can be quite distressing, especially for those who are not prepared. Even if you're just curious, not actually trying to claim it. Consider the question. Touching the blade is touching the blade. It will reveal what it reveals regardless of your intent. Though I suppose if you truly had no desire to lift it, the experience might be different. No one has ever tried without hopping to succeed. Lisa found herself walking toward the pedestal before she had consciously decided to move. It was strange. She was not the kind of person who did impulsive things. She made plans. She followed schedules. She read contracts 3 times before signing them. Yet something about the blade called to her in a way she could not explain. Maybe it was the way it caught the light. Maybe it was the mystery of it. Maybe it was just that she had spent the whole day watching people reach for something they desperately wanted and come away with nothing but pain, and some stubborn part of her wanted to understand why. She had always been curious. Her grandmother used to say it would get her in trouble someday. Her ex-husband had said the same thing, though with considerably less affection. Lisa had a habit of touching things she probably should not touch. Old books in antique shops, sculptures in museums, that allegedly cursed mirror at a yard sale in Eugene that she had bought for $3 despite the seller's warnings and still kept in her bathroom because it made her smile every morning. She reached the pedestal, turned to face her, his ancient eyes widening with something that might have been surprise or might have been alarm. Human, he said, you wish to attempt the trial. Not really, Lisa admitted. I'm just curious. I want to know what it feels like. Is that allowed? Curiosity is not a shield against truth. The blade will see you as it sees all others. It will weigh your soul. It will reveal your deepest shadows. I figured, but everyone who tried today survived, right? Some of them seemed pretty shaken up, but they all walked out of here under their own power. How bad can it be? Stared at her. His scales shifted through colors she did not recognize. After a long moment, he stepped aside. "The blade welcomes all who would face themselves," he said, "even those who do not understand what they are asking for." Lisa stepped forward. The pedestal was simple black stone, polished smooth by centuries of hands that had reached and failed. The blade rested in its groove, and up close she could see that it was even stranger than it had appeared from a distance. The colors moving across its surface were not reflections. They came from within, like light shining through stained glass, like memories given visible form. She saw her grandmother's kitchen. She saw her father's grave. She saw the apartment she had shared with her ex-husband on the day she finally admitted the marriage was over. She saw herself at 18, at 25, at 30. She saw every version of herself she had ever been, and she felt no shame. "Well," she said quietly, "here goes nothing." She wrapped her hand around the handle. The universe went silent. Lisa had expected pain. She had expected visions of her worst moments, her greatest failures, her most shameful secrets dragged into the light for judgment. She had watched 50 pilgrims scream and weep and collapse under the blade's scrutiny, and she had braced herself for the same fate. She was not afraid of it exactly, but she had prepared herself for discomfort at the very least. Instead, there was only warmth. It started in her palm where her skin touched the handle, and it spread slowly up her arm like honey flowing uphill. It reached her shoulder. It reached her chest. It settled somewhere behind her ribs where her heart beat steadily, calmly, without fear. The blade showed her things, not accusations, not condemnations, just memories flowing past like water in a stream. She saw herself at 6 years old, crying because the other children at school had laughed at her shoes. She saw herself at 14, lying awake at night wondering if she would ever be pretty enough or smart enough or good enough for anyone to love. She saw herself at 22, standing in her wedding dress and knowing deep in her bones that she was making a mistake, but going through with it anyway because she did not know how to disappoint people. She saw herself at 27, sitting alone in a coffee shop with divorce papers in her bag, finally admitting that the marriage was over and that staying would only make both of them more miserable. She saw herself at 30, starting her new job with the salvage fleet, walking through the corridors of her first derelict ship, and feeling for the first time in years like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. She saw herself at 32, visiting her grandmother's grave and telling the old woman everything she had never had the courage to say while she was alive. She saw herself cry. She saw herself laugh. She saw herself finally forgive herself for not being there at the end. The blade saw all of it. The blade saw her fears and her failures and her regrets. The blade saw the times she had been cruel and the times she had been kind. The blade saw the person she had been and the person she had become and the person she was still trying to be. And the blade found nothing wrong. Not because Lisa was perfect. She was not. She had made mistakes. She had hurt people. She had been selfish and scared and stupid more times than she could count. But she had never lied to herself about any of it. She had looked at her flaws and acknowledged them. She had looked at her failures and learned from them. She had looked at her shadow and accepted it as part of who she was. The blade did not demand purity. It demanded honesty. And Lisa had spent the last 10 years learning how to be honest with herself, even when the truth was uncomfortable. The warmth in her chest grew brighter. The silence around her deepened. And then, without any effort at all, she lifted her hand. The blade came with it. It rose from the pedestal as easily as a kitchen knife lifting from a counter. It weighed nothing. It weighed less than nothing. It felt like holding light, like holding music, like holding something that had been waiting for her specifically for 12,000 years. The blade sang. It was a single note, pure and clear and impossibly beautiful. It rang through the chamber and through the walls and through the very stone of the moon itself. It echoed out into space where ships in orbit detected it on their instruments and sent confused messages to each other asking what that sound had been. It reached Prime below and woke people from sleep, and made them look up at the sky with wonder in their eyes. And then the note faded, and the silence returned, and Lisa stood in the center of the inner chamber, holding the blade of first dawn in her hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. Had fallen to his knees. His ancient body trembled. His scales had gone completely white, a color Lisa had not seen on any before. When he spoke, his voice cracked like dry wood. "Impossible," he whispered. "That is impossible. No mortal can lift that blade." Lisa looked down at the weapon in her hand. It gleamed with inner light, colors still shifting across its surface but softer now. Calmer, like it was content. "This," she said, "I don't know. I've lifted heavier stuff at yard sales." Rushed forward, stopping a few feet away as though afraid to come closer. His eyes were huge, and his scales cycled through colors so fast Lisa could not track them. "You lifted it," he breathed. "You actually lifted it. In 12,000 years nobody has ever lifted it, and you just walked up and lifted it like it was nothing." "It kind of was nothing," Lisa admitted. "It doesn't weigh anything, or if it does, it's like half a pound at most. I was expecting it to be heavier." "The weight is not physical," said. He had risen to his feet again, though he still looked unsteady. "The blade weighs the soul. Those who carry darkness find it immovable. Those who carry light find it weightless. In 12, no one has ever found it weightless." "Well, I don't feel particularly light. I had 3 cups of coffee this morning and I skipped breakfast, but here we are." She gave the blade an experimental swing. It moved through the air like it was part of her arm, perfectly balanced, perfectly responsive. The colors on its surface brightened and dimmed in rhythm with her movement, like it was breathing with her, living with her. "What exactly does this thing do?" she asked. "Besides look pretty and make priests cry." Opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He seemed completely lost, like everything he had ever believed had just been turned upside down, and he had not yet figured out which way was up. "The records say many things," he finally managed. "It cuts through any material. It can heal wounds with a touch. It can reveal truth and banish illusion. It can open doors between worlds. The architects designed it to be the ultimate tool of justice and mercy, wielded by one who embodied both." "That sounds like a lot of responsibility." "It is the greatest responsibility in the galaxy. The blade bearer is meant to defend the defenseless, to bring light to darkness, to stand against evil wherever it appears. You have been chosen by the blade itself. You are now bound to that duty for as long as you live." Lisa considered this. She looked at the blade in her hand. She looked at the old priest still struggling to comprehend what had just happened. She looked at, who appeared to be on the verge of either laughing or crying or possibly both. "Listen," she said carefully. "I appreciate what you're saying. I really do. But I was supposed to be on Nexus Station 3 days ago. I have a job waiting for me. People are counting on me to show up and do the work they're paying me for. So whatever this whole destiny thing involves, it's going to have to wait until after I finish my contract." The chamber went very quiet. "You would," said slowly, "delay your sacred calling for a salvage job." "I signed a contract. My word means something. Besides, they already paid the deposit." The old priest stared at her like she had just announced her intention to use the sacred blade as a letter opener. "Also," Lisa added, "I'm hungry. Is there somewhere around here I can get something to eat?" All that soul-weighing really worked up an appetite. Word spread faster than any ship could travel. The sanctum had communication arrays that could send messages across the galaxy in moments, and within the first hour after Lisa lifted the blade, those arrays were burning with traffic. Priests sent word to their superiors. Governments received reports from their observers. News networks picked up fragments of the story and began broadcasting it to billions of viewers across thousands of worlds. By the second hour, ships were already changing course toward Prime. By the third hour, the orbital dock that had seemed so empty when Lisa arrived was filling with vessels of every size and description. Diplomatic cruisers, military frigates, private yachts belonging to the wealthy and powerful, news shuttles with camera drones trailing behind them like hungry birds. By morning, the skies above the holy moon were crowded with more ships than had gathered there in 1,000 years. Lisa slept through most of it. She had found a small room in the temple's guest quarters and collapsed onto the bed with the blade still in her hand. Had begged her not to let go of it, convinced that setting it down would somehow break the connection she had formed. Lisa was not sure she believed that, but the old priest had looked so fragile and hopeful that she did not have the heart to argue. So she slept with an ancient cosmic weapon tucked under her arm like a child's stuffed toy, and she dreamed of nothing in particular. When she woke, was waiting outside her door with breakfast on a tray and news of what had happened overnight. 17 governments have sent official delegations, he reported as Lisa ate. The Empire has demanded an audience. The Confederacy has offered to provide you with a permanent honor guard. The Council wishes to examine the blade to confirm its authenticity. And there are approximately 400 journalists in the courtyard hopping for an interview. 400. That was the count an hour ago. It may have increased since then. Lisa chewed her toast slowly. The blade sat beside her on the bed, gleaming quietly, apparently unconcerned by the chaos it had caused. "What about my ship?" she asked. "Are the repairs done?" "Your ship is ready. The dock workers completed the work early this morning, but the captain has informed us that departure may be difficult given the current traffic situation." "Traffic situation? You mean all those ships up there are blocking the way out?" "Essentially, yes." Lisa sighed. She had never wanted to be famous. She had never wanted to be important. She had just wanted to see a pretty temple and kill time while her engine got fixed. Now she was apparently the most significant person in the galaxy, and she could not even leave. "Okay," she said. "First things first. I need to talk to whoever is in charge of all those ships and explain that I have somewhere to be. Can you arrange that?" Scales shifted uncertainly. "You wish to address the delegations?" "I wish to tell them to move out of my way, but I'll be polite about it." The meeting took place in the sanctum's great hall, a chamber so large that Lisa's footsteps echoed for seconds after each step. Representatives from dozens of species filled the rows of stone benches, their eyes fixed on her as she walked to the raised platform at the front. The blade hung from her belt in a makeshift sheath she had fashioned from a torn curtain. It was not dignified, but it worked. "Thank you all for coming," Lisa said. Her voice carried clearly through the hall, amplified by some ancient acoustic design built into the walls. "I understand there's a lot of interest in what happened yesterday. I'll try to answer your questions as best I can, but I want to be clear about something first. I have a job to get to. I signed a contract weeks ago and people are depending on me. So whatever we need to discuss here, we need to discuss it quickly." The ambassador rose from his bench. It was not the one who had failed the trial, but another member of the delegation. His scales were dark red and his voice was cold. "You hold the most sacred artifact in the known galaxy," he said. "You have been chosen by the blade itself to fulfill a destiny that prophets have spoken of for, and you wish to rush through this moment so you can return to salvage work." "I wish to honor my commitments," Lisa replied. "That's all. The salvage job will take 2 weeks. After that, I'm happy to discuss whatever destiny you think I'm supposed to fulfill." "Destiny does not wait for convenience." "Everything waits for convenience. That's how schedules work." A murmur ran through the crowd. Lisa could not tell if it was approval or disapproval, probably some of both. A representative floated forward, her translucent body shimmering with inner light. "May we at least examine the blade? Our scholars have studied its legends for centuries. To see it actually lifted, actually held by a living being, would answer questions we have pondered for generations." Lisa considered this. She drew the blade from its curtain sheath and held it up. The colors on its surface shifted and danced, and the assembled representatives leaned forward as one. "You can look at it," Lisa said, "but I'm not handing it over, partly because I don't know what would happen if I did, and partly because would probably have a heart attack." "Do not have hearts," someone muttered from the back of the hall. Figure of speech. The drifted closer, her light body dimming as she approached the blade. She reached out one ephemeral hand and stopped just short of touching it. "It sings," she whispered. "Can you hear it? It sings constantly, a frequency beyond normal hearing. It has been silent for 12,000 years and now it sings." "I can feel it," Lisa admitted. "Sort of a humming in my chest. I thought it was just my imagination." "It is not imagination. The blade recognizes you. It has bonded with you. You are now part of its story as it is part of yours." "That's beautiful and also slightly creepy." They made a sound that might have been laughter. "You are very strange for a chosen one." "I'm not a chosen one. I'm just someone who happened to touch something. The blade did all the choosing." "And yet you lifted it when thousands before you could not. When warriors and saints and prophets failed, you succeeded. Does that not suggest something about your nature?" Lisa thought about this. She had been thinking about it since the moment the blade left its pedestal. She had been turning it over in her mind, examining it from every angle, trying to understand why she of all people had been the one to succeed. "Maybe," she said slowly, "or maybe I was just the first person who didn't want anything from it. Everyone else came here hoping the blade would prove something about them, that they were worthy, that they were special, that they deserved power or recognition or validation. I just came here because I was curious. I didn't need the blade to tell me who I am. I already know who I am." "And who are you?" "Someone who makes mistakes and learns from them. Someone who tries to be honest even when it's hard. Someone who keeps her promises." Lisa sheathed the blade again. "Speaking of which, I really do need to get to Nexus Station, so if we could wrap this up and clear the shipping lanes, I would appreciate it." The hall erupted in protests and demands and questions, but Lisa had already started walking toward the exit. She had said what she needed to say. The rest could wait. It took 3 days to clear the shipping lanes enough for Lisa to leave. 3 days of meetings and interviews and what felt like 1,000 different people asking the same questions in 1,000 different ways. Why her? How did it feel? What was she going to do with the blade? Did she understand the responsibility she now carried? Lisa answered them all as honestly as she could. She did not know why her. It felt warm. She was going to do her job and figure out the rest later. And yes, she understood that the blade came with responsibilities, but responsibilities did not disappear just because someone handed you a magic sword. On the morning of her departure came to see her off. The old priest looked different than he had on the day of the ceremony. Younger somehow, though that made no sense. Or perhaps not younger, but less burdened. Like a weight he had been carrying for centuries had finally been lifted from his shoulders. "I have spent 300 years waiting for someone to lift the blade," he said. "I thought I understood what the architects meant when they said it would choose one who carried no weight of self-deception. I believed they meant someone pure, someone without flaw or failure, someone who had never known darkness." "That doesn't sound like anyone real," Lisa said. "No, it does not. And that was my mistake." Scales shifted to a color Lisa had not seen before. She thought it might mean gratitude. The blade does not seek those who have never fallen. It seeks those who have fallen and risen, those who have faced their own shadows and made peace with them, those who do not need external validation because they have already validated themselves. "I spent a lot of money on therapy," Lisa admitted. "Maybe that's all this is. Years of talking to someone about my feelings finally paying off. Perhaps, or perhaps you were simply ready. Perhaps you had done the work that no one else was willing to do, the work of looking honestly at yourself and accepting what you found." The old priest bowed his head. "Whatever the reason, you have given me hope. For the first time in centuries, I believe the architects knew what they were doing." Lisa did not know what to say to that. She had never thought of herself as someone who gave people hope. She was just a salvage worker. She looked at broken things and figured out what could be saved. Maybe that was the point. Her ship lifted off from the orbital dock an hour later. The blade sat on the co-pilot's seat beside her, still gleaming, still humming that frequency she could feel but not quite hear. Through the viewport, she could see the other ships moving aside to let her pass, and she wondered how long this strange new attention would last. Probably forever. That was the thing about becoming part of a legend. You could not become it. You could only decide what kind of legend you wanted to be. The journey to Nexus Station took 6 days. Lisa spent most of it reading the files had given her about the blade's history, about the architects who had created it, about the prophecies that had surrounded it for. She learned that the blade could cut through any material, could heal wounds, could reveal truth and banish illusion. She learned that previous prophecies had spoken of the blade bearer as a great warrior, a conquering hero, a being of immense power who would reshape the galaxy. She did not feel like any of those things. She felt like someone who was very tired of reading and wanted to get back to work. Nexus Station was a massive structure at the intersection of 3 major trade routes. Ships came and went constantly, carrying goods and people and information across the vast distances of space. Lisa's client was waiting for her in the docking bay, a nervous-looking named who had hired her to evaluate a derelict freighter his salvage crew had discovered. "You're late," said. 3 days late. I was about to hire someone else." "Engine trouble," Lisa said. "Sorry about that." Notice the blade at her hip. His eyes went wide. "Is that?" "Yes." "You're the one who?" "Yes." "But you're here to look at a junked freighter." "I signed a contract. Are we doing this or not?" They did it. Lisa spent the next 2 weeks crawling through the derelict ship, cataloging damage, assessing salvage value, writing reports about which components could be repaired and which should be scrapped. It was familiar work, comfortable work, the kind of work where she knew exactly what was expected of her and exactly how to deliver it. The blade came with her everywhere. It cut through rusted bulkheads that would have taken her hours to bypass with conventional tools. It illuminated dark corridors with its shifting inner light. Once, when she slipped on a loose grating and sliced her palm on a jagged metal edge, it healed the wound before a single drop of blood could hit the floor. "Handy," she murmured, looking at her unmarked skin. "You might actually be useful." The blade hummed in response. Lisa could have sworn it sounded pleased. When the job was done and the reports were filed and had paid her in full, Lisa sat in her ship and thought about what came next. She could return to Prime and accept whatever destiny the priests wanted to give her. She could ignore the whole thing and keep doing salvage work until she retired. She could do something in between, something that honored both her new responsibilities and her old commitments. She thought about her grandmother, who had always said that being a good person was not about grand gestures. It was about small choices, made consistently, over a lifetime. It was about keeping promises and telling the truth and treating people with kindness even when it was hard. Maybe being the blade bearer was the same thing. Maybe it was not about conquering armies or reshaping the galaxy. Maybe it was just about making the right choices, one at a time, for as long as you lived. Lisa started the engines. The blade hummed beside her. "Okay," she said to it. "Let's see what happens next." She set a course for the nearest inhabited system, where she had heard rumors of a colony under siege by pirates. It was not the most heroic destination. It was not the most important problem in the galaxy. But it was a problem she could help with, and that was enough. That was always enough. The ship leaped into the star-streaked darkness of faster-than-light travel, carrying a salvage worker and a cosmic blade toward whatever small piece of destiny waited for them next. And because the blade had chosen her, because she faced herself honestly and kept her word, and believed that every promise mattered, the galaxy was a little bit brighter than it had been before. Not much brighter, not yet, but brightness had to start somewhere. It might as well start with a yard sale find.